All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Did Vic had to go change clothes or what?
Figured he went home and what's all down his pants and all.
Terrible.
So I'm thinking he's a little bit embarrassed.
Oh, well, he's a big boy. He'll get over it, Don't worry about it. Our lesson today, though, is talking about worship. We've been in this 2 or 3 weeks. We're still on the eastern side of the Jordan River with the children of Abraham, and they're right outside Jericho, right here across from the river there, and we're still in that. Why do you think God would keep these people here for a month or 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is? He's teaching them these things that they need to know. And I don't know about you, but if I learn anything, usually it's either hands-on, and generally if it's something hands-on, I don't forget it. It may not be in my active memory, but if I have to go through the routine or whatever it is, again, it'll come back pretty quickly like that. But he's repeating to them over and over. There's actually 2 speeches. Commentaries say that Moses gave them 2 speeches here, starting with chapter 1. We're in chapter 12 today. We're looking at verses in it. Chapter 5 was a separating point in there. From chapter 1 to 5 is the first speech. 5 through the end really is the second speech that he gave them. And he's telling them all these things and reminding them over and over again about the statutes, the laws, everything that God has told them before. He's having to repeat it. Part of the problem is that this is the second generation. The first generation had to die out in the wilderness. Oh, okay. I didn't push the button for them. Thank you. Vic's usually here, but he spilled porridge all over himself. So
these cups, they do. And that may be why.
Oh, don't help him out. Don't help him out. On page 91 of your NIV study guide, it's probably going to be like 87 in the King James or something. There's a paragraph there I wanted to read and look at there. What does it mean to you? The lesson's entitled Undivided Worship. Well, what would be divided worship? Can you use that to do?
Totally on God.
Okay. Okay.
Having other idols with God.
Mm-hmm. And we find out in our lesson, it brings it up. If I can pronounce it, syncretism.
I saw that word.
The blending of religions together, and that's happening in our day and time. Everything that's old is new again. Same thing that we're living through in 2025 America. It went on back then. Does it matter where we worship God? Asking you that question there. Does it matter where we worship God?
I think it matters if you go to church.
It does matter.
People say, I don't have to go to church to be a Christian. I
can
worship at home.
Yeah.
I think it's in the woods.
And you can worship other places, but it's not the same as having a central place.
Well, why is that though?
Because, God expects you to get together where 2 or 3 are gathered. There He is in the midst. He doesn't expect you to go out fishing alone or go hunting. You're not focusing and worshiping the whole time on God.
Right. You're focused on killing Bambi. But again, there's something to be said for the unity of the Spirit when believers join together, song, preaching, witnessing, testimony, whatever it is.
What people need prayer.
Right. Just like here in a Sunday school class. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure is. But that paragraph on page 91, I wanted to read it. We've all heard the statements, I don't need to go to church to worship. I can worship just as well while walking on the beach, is what they're using here. Working in my garden or hiking in the mountains. Well, those statements may contain a kernel of truth. That's a good way to explain it, isn't it? A kernel of truth.
Small.
Yeah, it's awful small. He says, but the experiences aren't the same, are they? And I think you'd have to agree, they're not the same as worshiping together with other believers. To worship with God's people in a place set aside for the distinct purpose centers our focus. Corporate worship draws our hearts to Him like nothing else can. Then it asks that question, do you think God cares about where and how people worship Him? And if so, why? Do you think God cares?
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
I
we
think so.
can. What evidence can we use to substantiate that belief? I agree with you 100%. The same thing. Well, you can look at the number of churches, and I know church buildings don't necessarily mean worship. There's a lot of people. I saw one this morning, one of the travel logs that I watch on a regular basis. It's a couple from Dallas, and they've traveled all over the United States, really, other countries too. But he was up in Delaware, and he was showing an old church, and this is where I forget the name of the town, but it's where William Penn first set foot when he came here, you know, when the King of England gave him the land and all this. And it was an old church back 17 or 1800 like that. And guess what was flying out? And it's still used for worship. What was flying out in front of it, kind of flag, rainbow, you know,
Yeah.
rainbow flag. Out in front of it, which denotes, you know, homosexuals, you know, and gay lifestyle, all that and everything. And I thought to myself, that's a divided church, you know. Can't be believers in Jesus Christ and go through that. Well, anyway, as the question said, do you think God cares about where and how people worship? And if so, why? Yeah. What do you think are some of the reasons people come to church or go to church? What are some of the reasons people come to church? Social interaction. That's the reason they do TikTok, Facebook, all these other social media places. They like to interact with others, different
Maybe they're,
thoughts.
because of their job that they have, they feel like it would be better for them if they're show up at church on Sundays.
That's true. True. Sure is. So what?
An election, share, or
Is that right? They wanted to hear what the discussion was and or discuss it one way or the other. Huh.
Now, sure, I'll have to speak up for him. He used to be at our church, but he has gotten married.
Oh, our sheriff, Mark.
Sheriff Mark has
Okay.
gotten married recently, and he's going to church with, I think, his
Well,
wife.
he's doing what he needs to
Yeah.
do. He sure is. What are some other reasons people come or go to church?
Love of
Well,
God.
I go because I hear things I need to
Yeah,
hear. Yes.
and that's worship.
So
Well, yeah.
every Sunday.
Yeah.
That's worship. Worship. You coming together to learn and to study. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you.
Well, and you learn, you understand the Bible better,
Mm-hmm.
and it 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 makes me curious about a lot of stuff that I didn't understand,
Yeah.
and that's why I like to hear different things because
Different
it
viewpoints.
does help
Mhm.
you.
And no matter whatever your experience is with the Bible, no one will ever garner all the wisdom and knowledge that's in the Bible. I don't care who you are or what. It's a lifelong learning process.
But I think that's why Sunday school is so important because uh, through Sunday school, that's where I learned the most because you're really delving into the
Going
lesson
deeper,
and deeper. It's not
into
just a few
Mhm.
scriptures that you hear on Sunday sermon.
And we're interacting here too.
True.
Right. Mhm. Time to discuss it and everything. Well, what we're looking at with Moses and the children of Israel here. He's interacting. He knows shortly he's going to die. God's already told him that he's not going into the promised land. And so he knows that time is getting short. It says a significant issue that God led Moses to address with his people was how and where they worship. That's what our lesson centers on today. Worshipped him, especially compared to how other people in Canaan worshiped their deities. And this was one of the big problems they had where they were going into on this side over here. The reason that the children of Israel came after 400 years of bondage was because God delivered them to come up here and throw these people out. Because this, I don't know God's mind on that, why this is the promised land, why he loves this land so much, but he does, and he still does, always has, and still does. But he sent them up here, brought them out of bondage to expel these people from the land. He gave them 400 and something years to change their ways. Well, we're fixing to celebrate 250-year anniversary of the United States of America. Could it be that we're on some sort of timetable too for as what God is looking at us? Is he looking at us?
Every day.
Especially as a nation and how we worship? Or even the fact, do we worship? What we worship? Where we worship? We as members of New Chapel Hill, we've decided to come to New Chapel Hill to worship, haven't we? Doesn't mean we don't go to other churches at different times like that, but this is where we center upon. We believe God is provided this land, 130-something years that the church has been here. But again, all these things God's looking at. As the Israelites prepared to enter the promised land, God provided specific instructions about their worship practice, specific instructions about how to worship. He had high expectations for them to follow instructions. And we need to think about our own worship. Is there anything we should do differently? I never thought about that until I read this question. Is there anything we need to do differently? Have you ever been in different churches and maybe even a Baptist church, just a different church? Everybody is unique in how they conduct worship services, usually what's done, things like that. So again, what would you do differently? What would you do differently? Is there anything that you would pick out or think about that you'd do differently in a worship service? I've heard people comment on the music. I comment on the sound system. I wish they'd get those speakers in the ceiling replaced, and even if they don't redo the whole sanctuary, get some sound in there. You know, and I know we've got that helper thing that Bobby hands out and everything every Sunday, but to me it's one-sided. I can on one side, and I can get most of everything, but that's just me. There's probably other things too. Does anyone else have anything you do differently? More importantly, is anything God would have us do differently in our worship? More important than anything that we would have differently. Even though I may be limited in here, still, I can get most of it, put it that way. Let's look at this first part here. Oh, kind of wordy there. Remove idolatry. Deuteronomy 12, 1 through 7. Do you guard your heart? What does it mean to guard your heart? Do you guard your mind? What does it mean to guard your mind? Count all those boxes now. Well, no, you can't do that. You're a good Baptist.
He always helps.
Oh, okay. Do you guard your worship of God? What would it mean to guard all these? Your heart, your mind, your worship of God. Well, it's basically thinking about it, turning it over in your mind. After you come out of a worship service later on that afternoon, as you're sitting on the couch trying to watch the Saints lose another game, what were the elements of the worship service? What was, and I like what Brother Scott does with the outline. I can see that, where his thought process, and you can actually go back and look at it. I keep it and take it home, and I'll look at it, later on that day or that week, and go back over it. Gives you something that you ruminate on and think about. Let's read these verses here, though. These are the decrees and laws you must be careful to follow in the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, has given you to possess. He says, as long as you live in the land, destroy completely all the places on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every spreading tree where the nations you are dispossessing worship their gods. We've heard that before, haven't we? He wants it all gone. He says in verse 3, break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and burn their Asherah poles into the fire. Cut down the idols of their gods and wipe out their names from those places. Verse 4, you must not worship the Lord your God in their way, but you are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling. So God's going to choose a place. He hadn't done it yet because they're still on this side of the river, and they're still, we'll find, or we'll talk about now, they've been sacrificing whatever they wanted to. They've been, as every man saw fit in his own eye, that's the way they've been worshiping over here. But God's showing them, we're going to change this. He says, to that place you must go. Verse 6, there bring your burnt offerings, sacrifices, tithes, special gifts, what you have vowed to give, and your free will offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. There in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your family shall eat and shall rejoice in everything you have put your hand to, because the Lord your God has blessed you. I got this chart over here. I don't know if you can see it from across the room. He's establishing a covenant with them. He's telling them he's the superior party in this, God is, and he's establishing a covenant of how he wants to be worshiped here. The different parts of a covenant is the title, identifies the superior party, suzerain, and the lesser party, vassal. Well, God's the greater party. The Israelites, that's us. We'd be in that position. We're the lesser party. Prologue shows how the superior partner has cared for the subordinate one in the past, thereby inspiring gratitude, obedience within the subordinate partner. And we'll find later Moses has been reciting the history of what God's done in their lives. And here we find the same thing. It'll be done again, too, in stipulations and laws. He says, lists the laws given by the superior party, which are to be obeyed by the subordinate partner. Suzerain, superior party, has cared for the vassal in the past, thereby inspiring gratitude and obedience with the subordinate partner. Dispositions and readings is the next. Witnesses to it, blessings and curses, and then the oath, ceremony, sanctions. God's going through all of this. So, in particular, these people will be a call to people by his name. And remember, the original intent of God for the nation of Israel, they were all supposed to be a priesthood. The whole nation was. And they were supposed to tell the entire world, inform the world, preach to the world, lead the entire world, known world at that time, to be believers in God. Well, they didn't carry out their job. What was God's instruction about idolatry in this promised land? What did he tell them? Destroy it. Just kind of set fire to it or throw it in a ditch and, or what. He said, get rid of all of it. He said, don't leave anything, nothing. Why would he do that? We don't have any idols around us, do we?
Sure we do. Whatever you put before God.
Yeah. And when you try to blend it in with your worship too, And some people, the music is everything, you know, and the organ, the piano, or the drums, the guitars, whatever. They either love it or they hate it. I've heard more people express displeasure over music than probably anything else I've ever heard in church. It's either too loud, not what they like, it doesn't lead them to worship. I'm just saying as a whole.
You can't please every age group.
You can't, especially when we're blended like we are with different ages and everything like that. So what does that mean? How do we resolve that? Man, sometimes you just keep your mouth shut, don't you? Yeah. Uh-huh. I'll leave it in God's hands. I think He can take care of it if we'll give it to Him. And so many people, though, they get upset. Oh, I'm just going to leave. Well, I'm not going to leave the church because whatever the music is. Israel's worship sites would differ from the Canaanites' use of high mountains and green trees as worship sites. On page 94 of the NIV, there was a question there I wanted to look at in it. Let's see where I can get to it there. Yeah, I'll get to it. On page 94 there under verses 4 and 7, verse 4 raises two significant questions. Number one, why was God determined to be worshiped differently? And it says, simply put, He was unlike the false gods and deities the Canaanites worship, the creator and sustainer of the universe and all that exists. He alone is God. All these others are false gods. All other supposed gods and deities were the products of people's imaginations and fanciful ideas. Well, that's kind of one of those duh moments. He is the only God. Second, it says, what did this prohibition include? And it says it was a complete and all-encompassing ban. The Israelites could not involve themselves in the Canaanites' pagan worship practices. They could not try to mix Canaanite and Hebrew worship practices. God allowed no compromise. Why do you think this was such a problem for the Hebrews? Do you know what kind of worship these Canaanites were worshiping? They would take their children, and I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of it. It's like a Buddha or something, just a huge statue that would probably fill as tall as this ceiling over here on the side, and they would heat it up, and they'd take their little babies and dump them into his hands like that and roast them in the fire. This is what these people were doing. They had sexual prostitutes at their temples, both male and female. Well, that right there caught a lot of Hebrew guys' eyes. I can guarantee you it did. And that was what led them, into a lot of this. And that was their wanting to mix it. So Satan was using a lot of different things to stir the pot, so to speak. He knows how to get to you. He knows where your weakest point is. On page 94, though, I think, that was that outline there, and the two questions there. Why was it important for the Israelites to focus first on the land of the pagan worship sites and related objects?
So they wouldn't try to mix the Canaanites and the Hebrew worship practice.
Yeah, God's got a plan in this. He's got a plan for our lives, and He's got a plan for our worship. He had a plan for how He wanted them to go about this. He knew what needed to take place first. It says the Lord knew that pagan influences would compromise Israel's worship. He also knew that adopting His standards would help Israel avoid idolatry in the future. And again, it's something to be guarded even in our battle today as we come to church, as we worship, as we live our lives. Why is it dangerous to follow our own ideas about worshiping God instead of following His design? Well, we as humans are fallible. God is infallible. We see that played out time and time again. Probably you've seen it in your life, something that God is leading you to do and you didn't do it, you went your own way. And then when it failed or didn't come out the way you wanted, you thought, well, wonder why. well, then God may have brought it to your thought, well, because you didn't follow me. I know it's been true in my life. Let's read these verses here. Our memory verse is included in this too. It's a long one. But worship God. You're not to do as we do here today, talking about how they were worshiping. Everyone doing as they see fit. Verse 9, since you have not yet reached the resting place and an inheritance the Lord your God has given you. You're close, but you're not there yet. Then our memory verse starts in verse 10, but you will cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and he will give you rest from all your enemies around you so that you will live in safety. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Then to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for his name, there you are to bring everything I command you. Goes back to the covenant there. Your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, and all the choice possessions you have vowed to the Lord. Again, if you bring an envelope to give, I know Shirley wrote that up, and she'll carry it to Pat, and Pat, I think, compounds all of it together and gets it ready to be made into a bank deposit and all that. A lot of people give online. Some of you may do that. I know some of the older adults upstairs, that's the way they do their tithing, their giving is through online like that. Makes it easier for them. In the wilderness, the Israelites sacrificed whatever and however they wished. That's in verse 1. The idea of resting place and inheritance for the people. What kind of resting place and inheritance? That's in verse 9. Since you have not reached the resting place and inheritance. Do you have a resting place and an inheritance? Well, you do not, because you're living here in the United States. Somebody died to give you the right to live in freedom, relative freedom here in these United States. God provided all of that. He provided the people to die in these different world wars and other combats. We're coming up on Veterans Day here Tuesday, in remembrance of all those who have given their lives, both men and women, going in above and beyond the call of duty sometimes in that. But we all have a resting place and inheritance. Thank God for it. The promised land would provide both of these, similar to what our nation and our homes provide for us. Security and stability. I know about a little after 5 o'clock, we had gotten back from up here. I came back up here and got the trash and went and thrown it away after the funeral and got back home a little after 5. First thing I did was get this shirt out in the ironing board and began ironing on it. I was about halfway through ironing and click, lights went out. And they blinked one time, and they blinked again. And they stayed off until like 7:30. It was all of Strozier Road. 221 different families or homes, whatever, were off.
What happened? Do you know?
My security disappeared. That's what happened.
Yeah. But why did the electricity go off on Strozier
I
Road?
think it was one of the transformers or something exploded. A neighbor, I called him and talked to him, and he said he was standing out in the yard when it happened because it's right at twilight. And he said he heard the explosion and he saw the line shaking, where he lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it's somewhere back towards 15 from that end to Strozier, I think. Anyway, my security was gone. We sat by a flashlight and waited for a couple of hours and it came back on, It was restored. Stability was gone. Security and stability are both attractive states that have been the same for them for a people who had wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. You think about it. These people have been out in the wilderness for 40 years, and you're going to give us a country, homes, gardens that we didn't plant, animals that you didn't raise or anything. We're going to get all of this. Kind of like what's going on with SNAP benefits, and everything. We're going to get all this food. We don't have to do anything. We got people from all over the world that have come here and were let in by a previous administration, and they're enjoying the benefits of what we as taxpayers, citizens, rightful citizens of the nation. I'll get off my soapbox here in a minute. But again, this is in relationship. Everything that's old is new again. It's still going on, what I'm saying. this goes out on the internet, I may get, which is supposed to be going out. Rather than having multiple or even a portable worship hub, they needed a centralized site where they could celebrate, worship, and participate in their God-directed rituals and services. They need to be drawn together as a nation. This is, and in worship is what he's going to and going to teach them about. Having a set place would give the Hebrews a sense of permanence. I'd have to agree with that. Here in Stand Firm is our last section that we're looking at, Deuteronomy 12:29. What actions did God say he would take here in these is one thing we need to look at. Verse 29, the Lord your God will cut off before you the nations you're about to invade and dispossess. This is what he's going to do. He said, I'm going to cut them off. But when you have driven them out and settled in the land, and after they have been destroyed before you, be careful not to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, these nations serve their gods. We will do the same. That's a quote. Verse 31, you must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods, they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even bring their sons and daughters, bringing this up, what I said earlier, in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. See that you do all I command you. Do not add to it or take off. Why would God be so picky? Says that in the book of Revelation, at the very end of it. Cursed is the man that adds to or takes away from the word of God. Why is God so picky about his word? Because he's God.
Creator of everything, and so he's in charge.
He knows what's best. What actions were the Israelites to take here? Don't get ensnared. Don't do like they did. Don't inquire about, what your neighbor did or the ones you drove out. Take care of your own stuff. Do what I tell you to do. God knew that the military campaign would be successful. He would see to that. However, the spiritual campaign could and did not turn out, or did turn out differently. And we know it did because they moved away from him. They failed in what they were supposed to do. And they did it many times, their failures. They would walk away from God. The book of Judges, if you've ever read that, they would do what was right for a while. They'd get comfortable and everything was going good. God was blessing. First thing you know, start straying. The eye strays, the heart strays. I want this. I want a bigger car. I want a bigger house. I need a bigger barn. Because I got more and I want even more, That's, then they would be, God would send an oppressor against them, teach them a lesson. Judge would have to come back around. It's like a big circle. They went in there. If you read the book of Judges, you see it many times. Just round and round and round. May be true of your own life. You may have seen it in your own life. A concern was that the Hebrews would attempt to incorporate some of the Canaanites' religious practice and beliefs into Judaism. The word for this type of mixing is that what I mentioned earlier, syncretism, verse 31, twice mentioned their gods. The Egyptians and Canaanites worshiped multiple gods. They worshiped animals, stars in the heaven, frogs, flies, everything. They worshiped all these different bulls, whatever, like that. Verse 31, though, speaks twice of the Lord singular, worshiping one God, differentiated the Israelites from all other people groups. And again, it's different for us today too, because one God, Jehovah God. How do we draw the line so we practice only what God finds acceptable to worship? How do we draw the line? Where do you draw the line? Have you ever been off course in your worship of God? Have you ever gotten, I won't say backslidden, but just off course? Are there things that you've learned about worship that at one time you didn't know? It can be different for each of us as through this process of sanctification, growing into that image of Jesus Christ. There are things God teaches us as we learn to live that life that reflects Jesus to the world around us, to our families, to our friends, our neighbors, others like that. And I know God, I've seen Him in my life, whittling that rough part off. Things that I used to do that I didn't know were wrong, but in His eyes were wrong. Thoughts, beliefs that I held, that God had to change or show me, and they were changed. Application of the lesson, though, believers should be prepared to recognize and avoid false gods. We are to worship the Lord by bringing our offerings to Him. Is that important? If He's the creator and sustainer of the universe, and everything that is was created by Him, well, what do we got to bring an offering to Him for? You think that's important?
Well, it's His to begin with.
Yeah, everything has been created that you pick up this pencil or pen, like that. Well, the wood, He created that makes it. The metal that goes around it, He created all those metals. The eraser, the composition of whatever that is. The paint that went on the outside of it, He created all those elements that made that. There's nothing in that pencil that He didn't create. Man just assembled it. And He gave somebody the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to do that. That wisdom and knowledge came from God. But again, we're to worship the Lord by bringing our offerings. It is important, I believe. He told us to do it. I've seen it in my life, though, when I've withheld what I had to give and you to give and been, I believe, punished for it. And it is just, that's part of those lessons He teaches us, those things. You think, well, I need this for that. And God said, no, you don't either. You give it to me, and then I'll take care of you and all the other. And I've seen that in my life. I hope you have. Maybe I hope you haven't seen that. Maybe you've always been resolute in your giving. Believers should be strong spiritually, worshiping God alone. Well, that's easy to say, but it's hard to do. We come in contact with people that don't know the Lord, and we struggle sometimes with how we can witness to them, speak to them about what God's done in our life. So many times we're what's the word? We're scared. That's not really the word I'm trying to use, but we're scared to say anything. When we know we should. And to get over, how do you get over that fear? You push yourself. You ask God, give me the courage to do this, and you do it. And if they bite your head off, well, the next one may not bite your head off. That's part of that learning process, all these things that are going together to bring us to that image of Jesus Christ. Again, any other thoughts? We've got a few minutes left, but we're out of time. Appreciate y'all coming, though, and pray for those that aren't here and those that are sick, those that are hurting in hospital. And especially this time of year coming up to the holidays, we can get wrapped up and lost in holidays sometimes and miss the point of the holidays. Join with me and we'll be dismissed. Father, again, your word is precious to us. Help us to value it and to value our relationship with you. You gave your only begotten Son to die for us, in that while we were unlovely and dead in sin, He came and gave His life anyway for us. We thank you for that. Father, we thank you for these that we've talked about that are in need, especially Emmy. and Tim Doty there in Dallas and Plano and what's going on in her life. We know that our lives here on this earth will end one day and we'll be in heaven with you, but we struggle to carry out your will here on this earth, to pray for others and to live a life that's glorifying to you. Again, be with our church, be with our staff, be with all those that are on search committees that are looking for both a youth minister and children's minister. Guide us and lead us that we might worship you the way you want us to. Show us and give us the courage to follow you, to know your word. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Vic's back there, but
Oh, he came in.